Hello, everybody. Oh, you can't let me know whether I can see and hear you because I have forgotten the step of opening my chat window. So, pardon me while I look away from the camera and go open Twitch. I'm looking around lamps and whatnot. Oh, hold on. And even though I distinctly remember turning my sound down, my sound is not down. I usually pop out the chat because I have made the font size enormous for my old eyes so that I can better see what you all have to say. So I see that Quindy has posted links to my things. Hopefully that means that she does. All right, I just gotta get one window out of the way and then I can stop looking weird. Hopefully that means that she can see and hear me. And while those links are up, it's holiday miniature season, and Reaper's got the 12 days up. And then also there are some miniatures that they kind of put in the vault outside of the holiday season. So I've painted a number of those, and if you went to the blog thing right now, the first blog post is it's got like big pictures of everything, links to alternate views if you want to know what the back is before you pick one, and then where I have them, there are chip painting articles like painting the color red, what else? Non-metallic gold. What all the presents are. There's Christmas Hugs Dragon has all these awesome presents on the base, and when it's just one flat color, sometimes it's hard to tell what's what. So I've circled everything and given you kind of a little roadmap so that you can see what ends where. So that is useful to you. And then I assume that Quindy will also share the link to the Reaper store, where you can find the 12 days miniatures, which you can make a minimum purchase, or for every $4 or equivalent currency from not the Australia hub, you can pick out a 12 days miniature. So, in the holiday spirit, sort of, is what I'll be working on today. And I'm going to kind of jump into that because I'm going to have some paint drying, and then I can go, recap last week and do that kind of thing. So let's see if I've got my light in a good location. Paper in a good location. All right, is that illuminating? This is a donkey, clearly. So he's in the nativity set. So there's a nativity box set. You can buy the nativity pieces individually, including this guy. So if you just want a donkey for a game, here he is. There's also a pack-laden version. So it's the same sculpt, but with carrying all your adventurer stuff. And I painted this many moons ago for Ron, and I think I posted on my blog once a post. It was like, half-ass is better than no ass at all. So some of us kind of have a problem with perfection, and it will make you not do things if you're afraid that you're going to be perfect, but you're a perfectionist. And I was just trying to tell myself and anyone else who might value the message that doing something is better than doing nothing. And to illustrate that, I had, a little half-ass here. Well, if you look on that side, that's half. That's the other half. So before I jump into painting, let's look at a picture of a donkey real quick. We may have more. Quindy's putting up links to the donkey, the various options in chat. Let's see. And I will be weird and do it this way. So here is kind of an average donkey. I was doing some searches earlier today, and okay, people text me a lot, and I noticed that there was actually more variation in the color of their coats than I realized. But when I painted the original, it was this classic pattern, and that is what I wish to reprise, I think. I do have other pictures of donkeys. What did I have those pictures for? Well, one, I mean, we do need to know what the back of the donkey looks like. And then I wanted to get like a close-up of, there's like some details of what's light and dark on the face and the ears. And then these guys had slightly different stripes. So this stripe on the back, the first time I painted this donkey, I did do a search. And I had not, I guess I'd never noticed that stripe when I'd seen donkeys in, okay, the eye is different, we'll get to that later. I'd never noticed that stripe looking at donkeys in movies or whatever. But it is very much a distinguishing feature. It goes down their back and then over the withers is the back, isn't it? I don't know, the shoulders, the shouldery areas. And so that's kind of one of the reasons to do research, is because you don't always actually know what color things are and what the markings are and stuff like that. So I did that. But where's this guy? So the first time I painted, I just did a Google search. And then these images are all from either Unsplash or Pexels, I think. So these are images that people have put up allowing other people to use them. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to write down the names and credit the photographers, but if you go search donkey on those two sites, you'll find it. And I was noticing when I was doing that there's a value to that, because if you do Google image search, most likely the first page or so of images that you're going to see are, stock photos, professionally lit and, photoshopped, post-processed photos. Whereas if you, looking through here, and there was a variety of lighting situations, I just found it helpful to thinking about some of, choosing the colors, thinking about where, so this part that I'm going to do now is, so he's got two main colors. I'm not really going to worry about all the markings and stuff yet. I want to work on the body. So we've got like the gray body and then the light underbelly, which is pretty common color scheme in animals. And it kind of messes with us as painters because we're used to things on the bottom, like if the light was hitting this donkey, which you can see that it is right there, the least light should be getting to his tummy because, the sun's up here and his sides are sticking out and kind of shadowing his tummy. But it's lighter down there. And we're used to, like, you put the shadows down there. So sometimes you'll kind of just go too far the other way where you make it really light and it draws a lot of attention. Like there, it looks really light, but I think even if this is real, which obviously it's kind of real, it's a photograph, but photographs don't exactly capture the way you might not have perceived it this way in life. But also, like, it's nighttime. I think the I might have brightened this photo too. It's dark around them. It's kind of coming from the bottom, so you're just seeing more contrast, I think. If you look at the guy that's behind him, like, the white is not glaring out to that same degree. So I kind of don't want to do that. I don't want the stomach of this animal to be the center of attention. This is good. How much lighter it is around the eye and the muzzle, that's going to be a focal point. I might want to do that there, but I want to do a little more like here, where maybe he's got a little dirt on it, or it's just not very well lit. I want to de-emphasize that. So I still want to have that difference between the coat looks like this here and that there, but I don't want to do it with so much contrast or interest that we all start looking here instead of here, or even at his half-ass, or ass-half, I guess. So even though this isn't like the kind of miniature where you've got, this is the guy we painted last week, something's under the armor and the plates are over that, and then people will ask me, well, what order should I paint those things in? And it's usually, well, kind of, where can you get your brush without messing something else up? Kind of start from the inside out. So that's an order of operations thing that's very common for people. You would think that this wouldn't be very complicated, but if I'm thinking about it, there are 2 or 3 kind of things that I'm going to be trying to do with color and value, and it's worth thinking about that and what order I want to attack them in. So the first one is what I was just talking about with, the stomach area is lighter and the back area is darker. So the stomach area is like a cream or light gray, and the back is like a darker gray or a browny gray. Then I also have where I want to use paint to accent the shapes. So I want you to get that this leg is a cylinder and that there's like a muscle definition there where it goes in, just the belly rounds under. I want to accent those shapes with paint to make sure that you can see them when he's, across the table or whatever. And that's it. That's when it starts getting tricky, because like I'm going to be using similar color transitions to make those shadows and lights as I may be using to do his tummy to his back thing. And then there's also all those little things that don't quite do. There's that stripe down the back. There's the way the ears are light and dark and light, and the little patches around the eyes. So what would my order of operations be? I just talked about a bunch of little details. Whatever way I do the rest, that's going to be nearer the end, because that's going to be little fiddly stuff if I'm wet blending or whatever. And when I do that first, then I'm just going to be messing myself up. I think it makes more sense for me to work on that big transition between this part of the coat color and the inside part of the coat color, and then come back and work on bringing out the shadow and light shapes. This is a weird triangle brush, which actually I have found more precise than you might think it would be. So I wasn't sure what size brush I'm going to need for this wet blending part, so I just grabbed some options, and I thought, well, the synthetic brush that I would normally use is messed up, and I keep forgetting to go buy another one that size. So I will see if that triangle works. I also might want to, I thought I did copy down the one I painted. Because part of the reason I'm doing this is when I posted this, I said something that I would paint this much differently if I were to paint it today. This is January 28th, 2014, apparently. And this took hours. Like, this took way longer than this stream is going to go. Doing those little blends, and then this, I was really feathering out those edges. And I'm super slow, as you all know. So what would I do differently today? I would worry less about making everything super smooth. This is a furry animal, even if it's not a super furry one. The texture is appropriate. And I would try to add a little more visual interest, I think. So I'm going to maybe see if I can make this gray stuff not just that gray, if we can mix it up a little. So I got like a bucket of grays here that go from kind of gray with a bit of brown, and this is probably like too brown, but for the next part that might work. So I need to kind of pick my initial 2 colors, and then and I have all my beiges over here, beiges and creams and whatnot. So see, I think even though, in some of my photos, the belly part really looked kind of more light gray than cream, if I vary the color slightly, like I have more yellow in the belly color instead of, more like a gray like that, I think that will be helpful. So this is actually way more yellow than is really in the picture I have. This is Treasure Map. I want the desert sand, but I don't know if I want it a little darker. I think we'll go with the desert sand. But this is too dark for the gray. Those were the colors. So these are the colors I used last week, and I did save my paint. We'll take a look at how that works in a moment. So I like this one. This has some brown in it, but I feel like I need a lighter value. And I feel like I'm going to end up mixing that myself. Well, stone gray's not bad. Stone gray, I know from experience, doesn't have the most coverage, which I end up using for something. So I actually will go with the wolf gray maybe. That's not enough difference. I'll mix the shadowed stone in with the wolf gray a little bit. I'm overthinking it. That's what I do. I mean, depending on, was I painting this for Ron, like I did the first time, or was I painting this for a game? And I need to just get it on the table quick. I might or might not. But that quick look at pictures, I mean, the Google image search is only going to take you like 5 minutes. You don't have to. I don't know if that's a little. That's a lot of that. We'll fix that in a minute. And that is also a lot of that. But my experience with wet blending has been that you use a lot of paint. So I just want to get an initial coat down. And this is a mistake people often make with wet blending. Very few colors are going to coat like in one coat on wet blending. And I think it's also good to have a foundation of paint. So you can either go over it a couple of different times wet blending, or I could just paint this and not even worry at all about the transitions and then start coming back in. Well, okay, not at all. Like, I don't want to make really sharp lines. Oh, that was the other thing I didn't mention, but I'll get to that in just a minute. So I don't want to have like sharp transition lines because that's making my life more difficult. But I don't have to worry about actual, awesome wet blending, which maybe I should have mixed my gray first. And I'll just get a little bit on there for now and then work on mixing. I am a little distracted today. I will not lie. Just got some stuff going on. I mean, it's not the end of the world or anything, but it is enough to be distracting. And I may want to exaggerate the darkness of his coat a little, or pick one that was the darker of my options, because then those markings on the nose and the eye will stand out more if the first darker. So maybe I didn't even want to mix anything in my shadowed stone. Who knows? Or I do want one of my darker grays. What else did I have? Mountain stone. That seems like very dark though. Let's see. Let's put it out on the palette and see. And I might, if I was doing this not on stream, I might take a minute and goof around on paper or something to make these decisions before I put out a bunch of my paper on my paint on my palette. But I might not, because I'm not always super organized. So when I was talking about the order of operations thing, a consideration with wet blending is like I cannot work fast enough with acrylic paint to wet blend this whole donkey. Like, that's a lot. So usually you kind of want to break things up, and it helps that he's got that little brown black stripe down the back, because I can now, as an initial break, just do one side or the other. So I'm probably just going to work on one side of the donkey here on stream. I won't have to spin him around as much and stuff. And so that's like one big transition. But here where, this leg really dips in, if it's a person, often it's easier because it'll be like, okay, like this little bit under the belt and then this bit over the belt and the cup. You can kind of break it up. There's usually accessories or joins of limbs and stuff where you break it up. But on something that doesn't have as many natural breaks, you just try to find places like here, where you're probably going to paint shadows. You're going to have opportunities to correct it if it's a little rough, basically. And now we get a good look at the difference in gray. Here, I'll just put another gray on. grays. There's not just one. I was trying, when I first was looking at colors, I was like, is it like fawn gray? Is that what I'm thinking of? And that's apparently, at least according to the internet at this time, kind of pinky purpley. So I guess maybe I was thinking more of dove gray as a little bit of the brown. The bubbles are not optimal. But that is what happens when I paint fast as well. Let's make sure. I think he's well illuminated, but if you can't see it very well, let me know. So I'm probably not going to do much with the face right now. Like, that's a fairly natural break too. And that there's a lot more detail there. So I may not be able to do this quick and dirty thing on his face. But here's the other place where I need my reference, is that, you know, like approximately where are these things? And so it does look like it's like the outside of the legs. I should have picked one of the darker guys for that photo. But that was a nice photo for being like just the side. A lot of them were people doing things, or the donkey was walking towards you or walking away. That one was a nice coming straight at us. And like, is this too yellowy? I don't know. But see, that does look very stark. I don't know, 4 kicks and giggles. Let's do more. See, I don't like that. That's too boring. On the theory that I can always dull this down later, I will stick with the lighter cream, which is a good coverage color, so I probably wouldn't need as many coats of that, or I might even need to add a little water to that for the wet blending part. So like as an initial pass, I'm just trying to get coverage and get paint on the thing. I'm not really blending. I'm just trying to not make transitions that are so rough that it's going to cause me problems later. And then I will work on. Yeah, his neck was pretty. The white doesn't seem to go up the neck. It just goes on the chest. Wow, it's very quiet. Nobody's here with Quindy? Is nobody here with Quindy? Oh, and the thing I didn't say about the nativity is you can actually get this all year round. You can get the pack donkey and the whole nativity set and the individual figures all year round. So there are a few holiday miniatures. Also Krampus. You can get Krampus all year round. But if you're looking for things to, you know, fill up your cart to get to the free mini stage, those guys will, hey, gel tip. Those guys will fill up your cart just as well as Santa and Christmas Eve, and I cannot remember, Christmas Night, I think her friend is called. Jess Rich painted those. They're very lovely. Well, okay, her name now is PK. Their name. All right, I have the memory of a sieve, so you remembering any of this is like a miracle. Oh, the nativity. So somebody posted something on my Facebook last time, not remembering their name. Well, not my Facebook, their Facebook, that I thought was hilarious, and that is nativity scenes are Warhammer for grandmas, which when you think about it is kind of true. But what I think you go a step farther, because the nativity is more like a skirmish game. You only need a small number of things, so that's more like Warlord or another skirmish game. Those people who collect their Christmas villages, where like different shops and stuff come out every year, and it's this like super expensive fancy thing and it lights up. That's more like a full Warhammer army, I think. All right, so the gray, it doesn't look like it did anything because I primed in gray. But if you turn over here, you can see that it is, in fact, a very different gray. Butts 1000. My mother-in-law has about 5 shelves full of extended Christmas Village nativity. Oh my goodness. Is she still looking every year for like new things to add to the scenery? Jill Tip got a couple of Christmas ghosts, which we just watched Spirited the other night, which is a Christmas Carol from the ghost point of view, and also with like a little more goofing off and profanity than you find in the average Christmas movie, which I was fine with. I am trying to decide which one of these is the better brush and not use that one, because that's why I'm now. Butts 1000. She thought the Warhammer for Grandma's comment was very funny. And I would say, if you have someone who doesn't get your hobby, just say, well, you know how people put out a nativity scene or they decorate their yard for Halloween or whatever. It's like that, but small. All right, so I think I actually want a step in between here and here. So wet blending isn't like, you don't do all like the steps like I do usually, but I find I do like to have, at least one in between step. Then I also like to try to remember what I did with the paint. Is it this color? I don't feel like it is. But let's find out. Let's put some of this down again and find out that yes, it's totally that color. All right, put some of that, which is desert sand, and that actually is a beyond the kit. I mean, an actual in the kit color, I think. We went to one of our local game stores yesterday with some friends that we normally only hang out with online. So Kevin got all excited when he saw there were some Reaper box sets that had miniatures that I painted on. They didn't actually, they were out of the paint kits, and I'm like, what is up with that? You should always have them in paint kits. I mean, because people like them and they sell well, not because it's me. That's not what I meant by that at all. Yeah, using this shadow stone. Well, he's using mounts. And so he grabbed a couple and brought them over to our friends to show them, and they were very impressed. And I'm like, yeah, if I went up and told the guy at the cash that I painted those, or if someone else overheard us, they'd be like, yeah, whatever. Local people are just never very impressed by that kind of thing. Because I think there was a shop once I was like offering that I'd autograph them or something if they thought that would be helpful, or do an intro thing or something, and they've just never been that interested, which is fine. I'm not looking for more to do. Hi, buddy. Oh, I thought you were Corb for a minute. Why did you sound like Corbin? Alas, you have waited until I am doing the thing. Jill Tip lost something in translation. There is a kit for the nativity scene. No, the nativity scene is a box set. There's not a kit for painting it. Some of my art is on boxes other than the paint kit. So this was like paint set number 4 and 5, I think, and then one of the Pathfinder sets has a couple of the Pathfinder goblins that I painted. But I was very surprised that this store had the 2 thin coats paint, because like really they mostly have Reaper stuff and GW stuff. And I was like, what's this random? What is this randomness? All right. So I didn't actually get 100% coverage on this little tum-tum. So generous amounts of paint with wet blending. And the brush should pretty much have paint on it whenever you're working the blend. So if I wanted to go get more of this light color and work that transition, I either wipe some off, or if I want to rinse out, I'll rinse but then put paint on the brush before I put it back on the miniature. If you put a damp brush on the miniature that has wet paint on it, it's going to pick up the paint. Right. Kind of want to clean it up and smooth it out with the gray. And then, I mean, that's not perfect. But is it terrible? I don't think it's terrible. Here I'm making the classic error of going over paint that is wet. At a certain point, you know, it's just a little shiny. That is not a good time to touch it. If it's all shiny, touching is good. If it's a little bit shiny, touching is bad. And everything I just did was bad. I just undid some work, which is, you know, always a danger with any kind of painting. But not the end of the world, because I can just do it again. Half-ass is better than no-ass. Or I can decide that living with it. Living with it is always also an answer. So you don't always have to change the miniature. Sometimes you have to change your mind. I'm going to go on the side of a little higher with the transition so that it is clear that it is meant to be. When I wet blend, I'm just stippling the colors. Yeah, I mean, you're trying to kind of convince them to mush together. And I generally find it easier to do that with more paint than, you know, just trying to use the tip of the brush to move around what's already there. I mean, certainly that is an option. So there's not as much paint. Let's try to go back and forth. But we really are trying to make acrylic paints do something they don't want to do. So you can also kind of use this as this is just roughing it in, and then I could go back and stipple over the transitions like I was doing last week with layering. This is tricky because there is it's like I don't want a perfectly seamless length of blend. It needs to happen over a fairly small area because the point, like the belly is obviously darker than the gray top coat. It's not like I don't know, like a sunset where there's like a transition from the darker to the lighter. It's like there is kind of a line. The line just needs to look like a furry line, not a razor sharp line. So anytime you're doing that kind of thing over a smaller area, which is the thing that happens with non-metallic metal too, it's trickier because you're trying to blend over just this instead of trying to blend over like that range of area. So you have a little less forgiving. So part of the stippling is that it's not meant to look like a completely smooth transition, like a fade would look, or you know, if you had like a cloak that was blue at the top and red at the bottom or something, you would have a gradual transition between those two. This is kind of meant to look like a line, just not a super liney line. No Time for Bull, thank you for the subscription. We very much appreciate that. So at a certain point, it is kind of switching over from wet blending to just using layering to refine that line. And like we do not have all day, so I'm going to call that good. But I am going to make sure that I think I can kind of see some gray through the paint on the other side of the legs, which I'm not flipping it and doing the blending thing on both sides, but I want it to look correct from this side for you all. So I will fix that up some other time, but I do need to work on his chest a little bit. So you can see how the breaking things up works, because those legs are there. Like, I don't have to fix the chest at the same time as working on the main part. And then I would be having to do this leg if I were gonna do him from all the angles, but I'm not, so I don't worry about it. Got like a little drip of gray that went down further than it was supposed to. So that was more me fixing a boo-boo than anything else. All right, so we will. Pendrake, this is totally a little donkey. This donkey is available from Reaper. He's got a pack version. He's part of the nativity, but he's also like just a donkey if you want to have a donkey in your game world, which they seem pretty useful. Why wouldn't you want to have a donkey in your game world? I know, I said I was done, and then I lied. Because what I kind of want to do is stage 2. Well, stage 1.5. So stage 1.5, I want to make this gray on the back more interesting before I work on adding the, the shadow and highlight areas. So what do I mean by more interesting? I mean the way, we've got these are different grays and everything, stuff like that. I've got those grays, but what if we have more brown? Oh, this was for the tummy. I don't know why I had that there. So these are going to seem like a lot, and they kind of are, but it is my hope that as we have the regular gray that we're blending this into, it will, gray these out a little, haha, and not look super crazy. Or if I'm wrong, then I'm painting over stuff. Because I'm probably not going to paint over it right away, because I still have the shadows and highlights stage, and if I use the same colors for the shadows and highlights stage on all of it, then that's going to unify the weirdness. So this is kind of like, I've done some bases on here, I think, where I did stuff like this. And I haven't really tried to do it on something smooth like this before. So will it be a colossal fail? I don't know. We'll find out together. But just in case, I am going to get more of my shadowed stone before that was not it, was it? It was supposed to be mountain stone. The thing about all the grays is then they're hard to tell apart. Pendrake may order a pack donkey, and Quindy very kindly had shared the link again. Hey Zachariah, I am. So I was talking a bit about, I looked up what the donkey looks like, and then thinking about what is a good order of operations. So the first thing was to get this transition between where it's light on the belly and darker on the back. And now I want to add I want to test out adding some visual interest to the grays. So I'm going to start with a foundation of my original color. I'm kind of thinking of my break points, because I was thinking I could do this whole thing at once, and now I think that I am crazy, and that is not true. And then I'm just going to blob in some of these other grays. Now, I should probably have more of a plan for where I'm doing that. But this isn't really more of a plan kind of day. And then it's wet blending again, so I just want to make those colors less blobby looking, more of a seamless transition. And that is also unifying the color a little bit more. Now, are those too extreme? I don't know, maybe they are. But I'm just adding a little more of my mountain stone. I'm not worried about the back for the people who came in later, like Zachariah. Donkeys have a black or dark brown stripe that goes all the way down the spine pretty much. So that is a natural transition point that I am taking advantage of to break up the painting over sections. This is also something that if I decide, you know, these blobby blobs are too weird or whatever, I can glaze over it before I do the next part. But I kind of want him to look furrier and more variegated. I mean, nature is not super uniform. And if you were here earlier and you saw my original version of this guy, which is, I think, in the picture on the link that Wendy shared, you know, he's very all this gray is one gray. So when I said to myself that it would be fun to repaint this, which actually, again, for those who came in late, I posted pictures of this guy in a blog post where I was talking about half-ass is better than no ass. So I illustrated that idea with my little painted ass that, you know, I'd painted him long before I started the blog, but it was an opportunity to share him. So you can see pictures there as well. And when I posted that, I cannot remember now if it's actually on the blog post or it was a comment from on my Patreon, one of my patrons. I said if I was to paint this now, I would paint it very differently. I think it was 2014, I think is when I painted this. And somebody said, well, I'd be interested to see that. And so I got a copy of this guy, and I was like, I prepped him up a while ago. And then when I was thinking, what could I paint, you know, for the next set of shows, and I was looking at holiday figures and stuff, I was like, the donkey. This would be a perfect opportunity for a non-Christmassy Christmas show to paint the donkey. So, I mean, it looks kind of blobby and weird, but remember, the shadows and highlights are going to go over that. And I have other tools that I can use if I decide that it still looks too blobby and weird. That part, the edges were too blobby and weird. So this is one of those things where I think I need to have faith and see how it looks at the end instead of going, nope, it's terrible, I'm just going to paint this all plain gray and start over. I've noticed there are some techniques where if you're doing dry brushing and washing, you know, everything, you do the wash and everything, all the detail comes out. It looks good already. That step is an improvement over just having plain color. You do one step of dry brushing, you're bringing out the textures again. That step is an improvement. With every step, you can see things getting better. So, and then you do like a lighter color dry brush, and then that looks even better. Layering is kind of similar, but a lot of techniques or effects are not like that. Non-metallic metal, you cannot really tell until like the last 10% of painting, when you've got your darkest colors and your lightest colors, whether it's working or not. OSL can be tricky because you're painting with your room lights coming from one direction, but you're painting your light coming from another direction. Everything's going to look super weird until you have enough on the miniature that you are creating the effect of where that light is coming from, and your brain is accepting that. So some things, especially as you start trying more advanced techniques, you can't be looking at it every step of the way going, oh, it's better, it's worse, I'm doing it right, I'm doing it wrong. Sometimes you got to just go all the way to the end and then start making those judgments. And then you know for next time, oh, I should have done more of this, I should have done less of that. But if you're constantly redoing things along the way, you're going to be undoing stuff that you should be doing because it's just not going to look right to you at that time. Then Drake has a fun fact for us. Burrito means little burro. Legend is that a guy with a tiny donkey made meat rolls and tortillas and brought them on the burro to sell at lunchtime. The workers started calling them burritos because they turned up carried on the little burro. Oh, that's so cute. And Pendrake also said if I could find a suitable ape, this guy could be Puzzle the donkey from the last battle, which I am not familiar with. No time for bull. How would you fix a chalky looking dry brush? You could try getting one of, like usually chalkiness comes from the lighter colors. Like either you've transitioned too quickly, like I tried to dry brush this gray with this cream, that would probably look chalky because I'd be seeing more transition lines. And the light things with more white in them, we tend to see as looking more chalky. So if I came back in and dry brushed with that and kind of melded those two together, maybe not, leave the top part alone, or I go over it and then I have to do the very top again with that. That's one thing you can try. You could also thin a color like this down, or even your starting color, and put it over the whole thing. And that's like a filter. So you're going to be softening the chalky looking. Then you're going to lose this brightness because you filtered this over this. You may need to go back over the top. The very brightest parts that you wanted to have again. But you will smooth things along the way. Unless it's actual literal texture, which is a different problem. Most of the time when people say chalky, I think they just mean that it looks streaky and rough. And it's not actual like pigments or dust or materials or whatever. I think it's just usually that you've got too stark a transition from the color you went over, and you just needed to have some in between. Sometimes you need to add just a little water. Like, I know you're not supposed to add a lot of water in dry brushing, but your paints can thicken up, and I like how I thin this down. I would use a similar dilution or consistency of paint for wet blending as I would use for dry brushing. And this was just a little goopy out of the bottle. I am delayed on doing my paint maintenance, so it's a little too viscous. Make sure you're getting enough off your brush. I mean, what a lot of people are doing with these kind of brushes now is you're not trying to dry it out completely, because then you're taking all the more binder out and leaving more pigment in, and that is going to look a little more speckly or chalky. Use a lighter hand too. Like, I like to tell people, think of it like you're Indiana Jones. You're dusting off the artifact. Like, you don't. I see people scrubbing, and I think you're way more likely to get a chalky look with scrubbing if you start with a light hand, and then if not enough color's coming out, maybe press a little harder, or it's time to reload your brush. But like, really getting this is not the right brush for that, because it is a scrub brush. But I was trying to get one that wasn't one of these brushes, because I know not everybody dry brushes with those. Especially when they throw them on the floor, they probably don't dry brush them. We'll just use this one. But I see people going like this. And you want to pull from the direction of the light. You want to use a light hand. So I guess how I fix chalky dry brush is trying not to do chalky, figuring out the steps to not make it look chalky in the first place. But a glaze is probably, the transition one, and I might try a glaze first, but then the transition one if that wasn't working, and just redo the top parts, the lightest parts if I had to. Although again, as we were saying earlier, if you came in a little late, sometimes you change your mind, you don't change your mini. Because sometimes you just need to call projects done and good enough. Maybe I should write a post about that to go with the half-ass post. I think that was actually that was a fairly popular post. I think one of the ones that surprised me for being really popular, because it wasn't in any way about like techniques or that kind of thing, was use the good stuff, which I think we don't. A lot of us will be like, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't. This mini is very special. Or I know how I want it to look, so I don't want to paint this one yet because it's not going to look right. And you paint like old crappy army men, or I painted my, I called them the Blobby Knights. My husband had a bunch of old Grenadier and Partha miniatures that had been thrown together into a chess piece box. So the lead did not do well in this scenario, and there were places where they were in fact very blobby. And that was dumb. Like, I should have just painted my nice Reaper miniatures I was buying, because you can see your progress a lot better on, it was bigger. They were, technology had moved on that sculptors could do a lot more, so the anatomy was better. So there's actual texture on there, which is non-ideal for wet blending. But I'm not going to worry about it because he's supposed to be furry. Maybe I can just kind of smooth it out just a little. But that probably means that some of my paint needs. I didn't make my wet palette super wet today. I don't know why I always worry about that for streaming, but I do. Is one of these kind of thick? So it looks a little weird. Well, probably partly because I didn't do that leg yet. But if we compare it to just how flat, I mean, that's just primer. But still, if I was painting the gray, it would be some kind of flat gray. Compared to, there's a little variation there. And now we're going to do the other side. Well, okay, I'm going to do the leg. First, I'm going to do the leg. So for adding the variation, and I do this on bases a lot. I do it less often on flat surfaces like this. So this is an interesting experiment. I laid down a coat of my, kind of original gray. Then I'm placing these into it, hoping for a little, natural blending. But it's acrylic paint. It doesn't spread out the way watercolor does. So I'm going to have to go back in with my original brown and work around the edges, or encourage it to mix and mingle, at the awkward Christmas party. All right, so now he's uniform. And it is time to bring out, look at these cool muscle shapes. So I can see them with my lamp, but, we're on the game table, we're way over here, people aren't seeing them, so I need to add some in so that everyone can see them. So I need a darker color. So I kind of don't want to use black. I think I'm going to go with the... Wait, I do have I couldn't find my walnut at first. But no, I like the brown liner. I think the brown liner is just that little bit gray. I'm going to go with that. And now I'm doing layering, not wet blending, because layering is how I usually do shadows and highlights. Although I thought about doing it with those. Maybe I will do it with one of these brushes, so he looks furrier. Well, the highlights. I don't think I would do that with shadows. And will I need an in-between? I don't know. Let's do it. So that was the mountain stone. You don't need to have 400 grays. You can also just add some other colors into the grays. I just have them, so. I mean, honestly, I think you do need to have 400 grays. But if you're traveling or you have a small selection of paints for some reason. Because some people can't live like that. All right, I'll be hard to hear for just a minute because I dropped a brush earlier and I feel like I might want that brush. But I dropped it creatively, apparently, because I do not see it. All right, we're going to hope that I have some other brush that is very similar in size and purpose. So I'm not going to use the reference pictures as much here because I don't know where the light's coming from or whatever. I'm going to use the shapes. If I needed to know, I could get a little light and put it over there and study it or take a picture. I do want somewhat thinner paint for this, or more transparent. We conflate consistency and transparency in our hobby, and it can be confusing. Like that probably needs way more water. But we'll find out. Do some shadows first. So this was like my starting gray. So I'll try this for a shadow. And I might have to come and fix that, where the cream is. It's still going to need a shadow, but it would have a different value of shadow because it's a lighter color. So that wasn't exactly wet blending. It's more, I don't know, some people call it feathering. Some people call a brush technique feathering, like you're going like that. This would be what people do with two brush blending or spit blending, but I'm not using two brushes or spit. So basically I'm just trying to soften the edges before it dries with a paintbrush that doesn't have paint. So it's a bit like what I was doing with wet blending, but now I don't want paint on the brush. And I don't actually paint that way a lot, actually. I normally just do the mini transitions and smooth everything out, but it's good to experiment and stuff. So today I'm doing it. There's a little something there. And then if the edge doesn't look amazing, I can fix it later. Just needs to be mostly good right now. Speaking of blending, I guess. Spit blending is a new one also. Ooh. So what would happen is you would apply the paint, rinse the brush off real quick, lick it, and then do it. And your saliva actually is like, it's a different consistency. It works better than water. I don't do that. I don't recommend doing that because you're licking a brush in that scenario, and I don't recommend licking a brush. But I get why people do it because it genuinely is. Now, do I use spit sculpting? Yeah, sometimes. Spit is also a good lubricant for sculpting tools. Because it's not, if you use Vaseline or something, then that's on the surface and you're going to have to wash that off and stuff, where spit. Yeah, if you DNA tested people's miniatures, you could probably figure out who painted them. All right, I was doing something. I was reviewing what we did last week. So I shared all the secrets of my blending last week for the 100th episode. Reaper Miniatures is just not loving my spit conversation. Oh, okay, brush licking is less gross. Well, it's still spit. So people who are forming the tip, I mean, that's probably part of what works with the blending. So this is, I'm happy with the blending. I'm not entirely happy with, like, if you go compare this to, this is Baron Blacktree. He's a dungeon dweller. There's a section in the craft section that is, has some painting guides for, I don't know, a dozen or so of the Dungeon Dwellers miniatures. So there's a painting guide for this guy, and it shows the colors and everything. So if you go look at the cloak there, it looks a little different because the part where I was really thinking about where would the light be, I wasn't thinking about, like, you know, I was talking to you and trying to explain how I did the blending and stuff. So I don't think the light looks good, but the blending is nice. So if you missed that last week, and it does say all the colors in there, but basically it's the dark elf triad, and then black, and just a little bit of, this is Vampiric Shadow, that you can barely see the label on this one because it's super old. But Quindy has shared a link to the painting guides. So if you ever wanted to know all of my, and this was all done dry over wet, so this is not wet blending or spit blending or two brush blending or any of that. It's just layering forever, which is how I normally blend. Pendrick asks, would a saline solution be a less gross option? I would feel reluctant to add salt to paint, particularly if it were something I wanted to keep a while. People in watercolor painting, it's, you do like a wash, and while the paint is wet, you throw salt on it and you get this cool effect. But whether that's archival, if it changes the pH and stuff, you could try it, but if it was something I was painting as a gift or that I wanted to last a really long time, I probably would not do that. And I don't know that salt's the magic ingredient. I mean, how many weird things are in our spit? I think it's more the consistency that's slightly, you know, it's just not as watery as water. I don't know. Medium might work. Maybe do that. And now medium. Instead of spit would be more likely to have the same effect than saline solution, I think. So this muscle's kind of round, so I'm treating it like a sphere. And how I put the highlight on them. And then the legs are cylinders, or somewhat complex cylinders, but because he's got like a little bits of ligament or bone or whatever that you can kind of see beneath the skin. And if you don't have medium, but you have Reaper brush on sealer, you can use that as medium. Test it out, see if you like it before you bother to get some other medium. I mean, honestly, I just use that as medium all the time. I have some other mediums, but then I would have to get up and walk across the room. Other things that aren't going to happen. I'm not going to go too nuts on the face because I haven't, you know, done this part where I've added the little cream bits. Finger blending I do really do all the time. I mean, you know, it's, you got a little more somewhere than you wanted, either in the volume of paint or where the paint went. And the finger swipe is as good a way to solve that problem as any. Because I always wash my hands before I paint, so I don't have a lot of finger oils. Now my guess is that this, I don't know if this is transparent enough, but we'll find out. Sweat blending. And now Pendrick is talking about tears. Oh my gosh, well let's not be this depressed while we're painting. Where we're crying using our tears to blend with. Green users. Maybe it's not about the spit, it's more about controlling the amount of moisture. That probably is part of it. Because, you know, if I just wipe it off on the side, like, how do I know how much I have on it? I got my little sponge thing, which I think usually gives me the correct amount of moisture. So we're going to try going darker, and we're going to be prepared for to go, ah, too dark. Is he in focus? Okay. The light's in my eye a little bit, so I can't always tell. So I don't want to go nuts with this. I want to make him look like he hasn't been fed or anything, because he has. He's a well cared for, valued member of the family or adventuring group. Well, I guess this guy's not adventuring because he doesn't have all his packs on like his pack donkey friend. This is a nice deep shadow because that's really, no, that's underhanging there. Get a little more here. So the funky color thing may still be looking too funky to some people, but I have not started on highlights yet. So I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm turning him looking for this stop sign of don't put that paint where you're about to put the paint, because there's still wet paint. And we're waiting and we're waiting. Oh my gosh, literal watching paint dry. Turning him also makes it easier to see where the actual edge of the paint I just put on is. And he's kind of furry. I'm not going to go too bananas about making it all perfect. I think the original one I painted, if it has a problem, it's probably that it's too perfect. That, I feel like this line is too liney though, like that. That's not how the muscle looks. I'm going to come back in with a little bit lighter paint. But now let's start. Do I want to layer or do I want to try my funky brushes? I set up for my funky brushes. I don't think I have something to wipe it off on. Oh, I do. All right. Do I have some place to put the thing? No. We'll figure it out. I mean, I kind of want them to have just slightly smaller versions of these, but not the super small version. This one smaller? No. All right, we'll move with this one. So, super light hand. Going in and dry brushing. I'm Indiana Jones. Actually, Indiana Jones is probably a bad example of how to do non-destructive archaeology. I'm the guy Indiana Jones hands the thing over to, who very carefully dusts it off and gets it ready to put it on display. And I was conservative in, you know, I started here. I'm being conservative in jumping up, in part to avoid streaky, chalky kind of. There must be a better place to put that. But I forgot something I was going to show you in relation to last week. But I'm going to work on this for a little bit and then go back to that, because I said I would try my saving the paint technique. And I did, but I haven't really checked up on it. So I do not know the exact condition of the paint. I haven't really painted the little tail yet because there's some of the marking considerations there too. I'm concerned that that step is too much of a jump. I can just mix in some of my previous step. And again, I've changed, so I want to be so light until I know what it looks like. I'm like, okay, it's not too bad. I can press a little more aggressively. But yes, I'm also starting here where the light is. I'm not starting down here on the fetlock, I think. Poor Julie, she's probably like, oh my gosh, none of these anatomical terms are correct. So I'm trying to use up some of my paint before I come down there. I want a little bit of a highlight there, but I don't want it to go bam in your face, which is more likely to happen if the brush has the full load of paint when I get down there. I'm just going to drop brushes today. This one I found at least. But yes, so I think my solution for chalky dry brushing is to try to do things to avoid it looking chalky in the first place rather than making it, trying to fix chalky later. And cheeks. Are there any good rules of thumb for choosing the main color of a horse in comparison to the overall color of the horse? I'm currently working on cavalry and have been thinking about it. This is a donkey, which I did research, but I did not research horses. I would suggest doing some searches because I think there are some patterns to colors of one part of a horse that what color will the other part be. I'm sure I've seen something with information like that. I just do not know that off the top of my head. But there's a very thriving hobby that's kind of adjacent to ours. People take Breyer plastic horses and repaint them to be very realistic and pretty looking instead of the, plastic pre-paint from the factory kind of thing. So there are 100% going to be resource sites about, if it's a Palomino horse, the hooves are going to look like this and the mane is going to look like that, or these are the possible variations. I know that information is out there. I do not know the answer to the question, but I guarantee you that some very smart people on the internet do. Okay, I said I wasn't doing the face because I hadn't really gone into the face variation. So I'm in here, I'm in this paint, and I'm feeling like it might be a little thick. So I'm risking the chalky. I'm gonna try to make sure I get plenty of it off. I can feel a bit of moisture, but I can't really see much, so we're gonna hope. Nope, I can still see a little bit. It goes so light until I know. Yeah, it is just a little. So I would probably thin that down, even though it's dry brushing. It's been out on my palette. I mean, I don't want him to look super smooth. I want kind of a suggestion of furriness, but I don't want it to look like super rough and weird. I don't think I want to go much lighter in value than that. If I were going to change the value, I would rather add more shadows. Pendrake has met a Palomino. Her name was Savannah. And says Palominos have blondish manes. There are a ton of horse color to mane color, and yes, do research. As an example, Zachariah is saying there are gray horses and white horses, and they'll look the same to the untrained eye because the skin color is being referenced in that case, and a whole bunch of other variations. Yeah, like horse people, that is a whole world, and they know all that stuff. Green users, Julie has done her research, says bay equals dark mane and tail on a chestnut body, sorrel equals light mane and tail on brown. Thank you. I always wondered what those were. So I'm gonna come in a little with my original color because I feel like the middle got lost a little doing that. I just wanna make sure that I'm getting those shapes. And then there may be a few places where, okay, that brown never really did get blended in to look not completely weird. And do I like it? I don't even know. I don't know if I like it. Is it more interesting than this? Like just a plain gray? Probably. I think it looks more natural. Now, I should do something with his tummy a little bit, because that's just that, and there are going to be shadows on the tummy. I don't think I want to go lighter than that, but I do want to go a little, do some shadows. So let's see where we are. This was desert sand, and desert stone does look like a nice shadow color for that. Zachariah M. Don't forget to research the hoof colors, because those can vary horse to horse as well, and socks and blazes. Get all those going and you'll have some nice looking horses. Yeah, I'd be willing to bet there's even like a chart that somebody's made where it's kind of like, you know, this color coat, you can have X, Y, and Z color hooves, and A, B, and C color mane, and that kind of thing. But I think it's all genetic linking. Green users, buckskin equals dark mane and tail on light brown. Ooh. That sounds pretty. Okay, it is hard for me to see the tummy of this guy because of the holder. So hopefully you all can see a little bit. And that adds some nice warmth to that as well. So I was trying to pick colors where I was going to have more yellow in this light color and less yellow in the browns that I was using on the creamy part. And that's not necessarily, in this case, that's not necessarily research. That's kind of more color stuff that part of the way to create some visual difference between this part of the animal and that part of the animal is to change the color temperature a little bit. Because, you know, a lot of the time, really, this is going to be like a darker gray. We might even do just a little bit of that, because I don't want this part to stick out. It's the not interesting parts of the guy. So we want to see shapes. We want to get that idea, but we don't want to have people's eyes go, oh, I want to look over there. At that place you don't want me to look. Alright, call that good enough. And I think that means that I do have to start doing some of the detailing. So let us go back. Oh, but we'll look at the paint first. Dig out my paint. So last week when I was doing the layering, smooth blending thing on this guy, I used these paints because that is how I really do it. And often if it is a big area, I will keep them like this. Now I learned something saving this for you. So thank you for prompting me to save it. So because I was on screen, I used this nice new sponge. This worked not as well. I think there's still more air in the cells or something, but the paint was drying out a lot faster than these ones where I've been doing my thing where I rinse I rinse my brush and wipe it on, or I wipe my brush tip on here instead of the spit option. And it's acrylic paint, and eventually that binder gets in there and it starts changing the consistency of the sponge. But this works better, it turns out. So whatever's happening here, I guess maybe it's filling in some of the air holes, but it works better for saving this. So the first day or two, the sponge wasn't really wet enough. The other thing that I didn't think about, well, I thought about it, but then I was lazy, is normally when I do this, I'm painting over a span of time. I'm checking the paint every couple of days, and I'm adding water and stirring it as necessary. I did not do that. So this is paint that I have not touched since the end of the stream. I just added water to my sponge and switched out the sponge when I realized the problem. So this is going to be goopy here. I think you can see how goopy this is. But even I have used like that happens when I'm doing this for real. You know, it's winter, it's dry. I didn't get the sponge exactly right. It's not ideal. I'd prefer that I keep the paint in slightly better condition than that, but it's fine. It's still usable. Well, actually, let's put it on the guy, since, you know, I'm telling you that I could put it on the guy. So it's not like textury and globby and gross, even though I did the not ideal thing. But I would check every one. Like that one isn't even as dried out. Often it is the ones on the edges that get a little more dried out. But this pool wasn't, there wasn't as much paint in there, and I had that dry sponge, and there's like hardly anything in there. So that did not make it. And that's why I filled these up as high as I did, so that there was a higher surface level. I mean, that's just about as thick as the stuff over there that came out of the bottle that I hadn't fixed up lately. I do have to be very careful when I rinse this out to make sure that there aren't water drops on it, so that I know how much water is going in here. Like, I know I want water in this, but once I get it the way I want it, I don't want to be stirring it. Get more water. So this is exactly 1 week of reverse wet sponge, or reverse wet palette. So, and again, we'll paint it on here. There's nothing here, so you can see that it's still, I would also be making sure that I'm diluting it enough to be the transparency that I want, not just, is it goopy? So if I'd taken just a little more trouble, this would all be fine. And that if that little skin gets in from the edge, as long as I don't actually put that on the miniature, it's fine. Let's go up here to the lightest color. See, there probably wasn't enough paint in here. Plus, it's got the white, so it dries out faster. But even that goopiness, I think it's probably still usable. Yep, it's fine. So that is how I keep paint for a long time without a wet palette. The secret has been revealed. So that's a ceramic palette, and it does have very specific little wells. That kind of palette is not super common. If you look for a 28 well palette, you should get that exact thing with that big rectangular part that I find useless. But I recently realized that Meeden, Meeden, has a 24 well palette that is just the wells in a smaller format. And I wish I had some of those. Let's see, we're still talking about how awesome horses are and how beautiful they are. Zachariah loves buckskin horses. Soft spot is for Appaloosas. I had an Appaloosa Tennessee Walker mix I preferred to ride. He was very difficult to get into canter for the uninitiated. When Julie was growing up, a friend of mine's uncle raised Tennessee Walkers. He would get very angry when we encouraged them to canter or gallop. Yeah, I have heard that is, like, that's a whole thing, training those. I have heard that. Even though I live in Tennessee, and I don't think I've ever actually seen one in person. Although we went to, at Dollywood, they have some kind of, I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it's like medieval times, but with horses and not medieval. If that explains it at all. And our friend's daughter wanted to do that for her birthday. So, were there Tennessee Walkers there? I don't think so. I don't think that was one of them. It was more like choreography, where they would all do things in patterns in unison. All right, so we go back to my guy, and we need to know what his face looks like. So there's the original one I was using, but I think I had a picture. Yeah, there's a nice face picture. So he does have white under the jaw. We're going to ignore that. But the ears, so it's the gray of the coat on the back, or in this case, he's got more brown. He's got that color there. But then the inner edge is very dark, like that stripe, and then it's white in the middle, so that's fun. Then you've got the white muzzle, and this is nice. This is like so nice for contrast in how we paint miniatures. Like you've got the dark rim around the eye, and then it's got white or cream color around it. Like that's just the exact right contrast that you want to draw. Like this is excellent. Natural patterning to draw your eye right there. So he's working with us, unlike some animals. But while we're on the topic of the eye, which I probably won't paint right now, but this is something to note for horses too. The pupil is horizontal instead of vertical. This guy looks very startled, I know, but often their eyes are really dark and you can't see it. This was some kind of, these are off Wikipedia. I think all the eye pictures are off Wikipedia. And it was some specific kind of donkey and it's like your horse thing. If the donkey is this color, then it might have the lighter eyes, and you can see the sideways pupil more, which I did paint on original guy, and I gave him slightly lighter eyes than they would a lot of them have, so that you can see it. But I don't know if I'll do the whole eye thing right now. Maybe I will. Normally I would paint the eyes earlier on, partly because I like painting them more once they have their eyes and they've got more personality. I like my miniature. I like to start with the eyes often. I know some people, it's the other way. They don't want to feel like they're staring at them. But stare away, my little miniature friends. Just not people eyes on horses, please, says Zachariah. But if you've never actually looked at a horse eye and you just don't realize, like, what is happening? Lizard eyes are fun. There are some very fun lizard eye variations too that when I was painting, I think it was the Bonsylvanian, this is tooth and nail, I believe. Bonsylvanian Cthulhu, who I think his name is Lou, actually. I looked up like just all kinds of eyes to see, some weird looking, because the chibi style have giant eyes, so you have room to get in there and really do interesting things. I'm actually going to need that picture for reference. So it's a great time to use my phone. A few horse eyes do happen to be close to human eye pupil proportions, says Zachariah. Oh, this poor guy I think he's got a very Eeyore eye going on. We'll go back to this one. He seems happier. Actually, he seems sleepy. But it's time for afternoon nap, I guess. So I really want to actually overshoot a little, because some of it is fur. Not just the eye skin. Oh, we don't have to do that eye. We're not doing that. But we need this color. Is this the correct order to do this in? I don't know. The ear situation is interesting. But it's nice that it's on the edge, so I don't have to stress too much about like an amazing blend, because you cannot look at all of that at once. You have to turn it, and then you forget exactly what the edge transition is. And that is advantageous for me. I'm just kind of laying it in now. then we'll work on detailing it. I don't think I did paint the ear at all in the original bunch, and I didn't do all of his face, I don't think. And he needs this paint that has definitely become a little too thick. So for consistency, what I want is no texture. So when I do this, let's zoom way in. All right, let's zoom way in and then move this slightly. When I do this and I draw the brush through, you see how it takes a minute for that line, the wake, to fill in? That is paint that might start adding texture to my miniature. So regardless of what transparency I want it to be, I don't want it to be gloopy. So that is when I know I need to add water on the basis of consistency. This is maybe a little. So sometimes you're adding water or medium because you're trying to control to make the paint a little less opaque. You're trying to control the opacity. Sometimes you're adding water, and I probably wouldn't add medium if something's very thick because medium is more viscous than water. Sometimes you're adding it because you're trying to control the consistency, and those are two different tasks. And it's good to kind of be aware of why you're adding water to paint and whether you need to. Because if you want a very opaque paint and the consistency is fine, then you don't want to add water to it just because someone told you that you have to add water. What you want to do is you make sure that, okay, now it's filling in quicker. It's quicker, but it's not like super quick. We'll see. So don't add water unless you need to add water. Because otherwise you're making your life, that goes pretty far up. Okay. I suspect this varies greatly with the animal, with each animal too. And this guy also had more white under the jaw, and I chose not to paint our guy with white under the jaw. That one. And I still have to do the shading and highlighting on that part, so I don't need to. Hopefully that's not going to bug the camera too much. It doesn't need to be like totally amazing. I do want to get full coverage on the creamier color. I don't know if you can see there's a little bit. I mean, because I'm kind of trying to do variations on him, it would probably be fine. If I was painting this directly, so this is a metal miniature, and I think he does come in bones as well. But if I was painting this directly on bones, I would definitely make sure that that was full coverage for the strength of the paint, not anything to do with the color. And I tend to like to do that anyway out of an abundance of caution. But also probably that thing in your brain that tries to make everything uniform when stuff like animals and that shouldn't be uniform. So we mess ourselves up sometimes. And this actually looks weird because that's their shadow there. So I need to just put some of the shadow back. And then it looks like This guy's got a little more darkness at the end of his nose, and that does seem to be very common. So I'll do that as well. But not quite as dark. At least until I add in shadows. Maybe? I don't know. Gets a little nostril darker too. Actually, I guess that's not a little nostril. That's a pretty respectably sized nostril right there. Alright, so now this part, I said I didn't mind having that, you know, having it brighter. I mean, first of all, because more light is going to be reaching there, but also that is in our area of interest. So I could even go lighter. But at the very least, I make sure that I have, you know, some of that in my highlight areas. And then, can we use this for his eye color? Is it too light? Make it a little darker. Corners and stuff. And come back in with the brown liner and do that horizontal pupil thing. Maybe. Why is my brown liner not coming off my brush? Maybe I do need walnut for this because the brown liner isn't as opaque. Or I might even want straight up black to make sure there's lots of contrast. It's tricky with the eye color because it is light, but our guys are small, and if we don't make it light, then we're just not even going to be able to see that funky horizontal pupil. Which honestly, I cannot tell if I can see that there's a funky horizontal pupil. So this may be not a possible to do on stream thing, but one more, that's a little more noticeable. And I will go ahead and use that actual black around the eye too. I do want this to be the area of highest contrast after all. And go back to my brown liner for kind of the fur part of that. And then the light color fur is around that. So I'm kind of using like a stippling dotting motion because I'm trying to avoid, you know, like a really liney concrete, you know, if you do that, well, if you do that and you have some paint on your brush, like you get a lot of edges. You do this, you're already breaking up that edge. Even without changing colors or anything. Oops, that was just a bit of the 3D-ness caught my brush. And I might have to blend that in. Let's see. This is the part you could probably manipulate the dark line, and then this part, if you were really aiming for like a specific expression, you're trying to give him a bit of a human expression, I would mess around with those parts, but I don't think I'm trying to do that, so just gonna try for the blending. It'll look a little more natural, because if you think about it, so these coat colors, or like tiger stripes or any kind of thing, it's all little hairs. So there's no line is ever going to be like this, because, you know, the little hairs are breaking that up. Even if you're looking at a distance where you can't really see the hair, that's the effect it has, is softening the lines. So when you get something that's supposed to be natural and it looks painted, that is often what the problem is that that line isn't broken up enough to look like, you know, what the fur is doing. I don't think I explained that very well, but hopefully you can see what I mean. That the jaw is very defined, but I kind of ended up with a bit of a line, probably because, you know, I didn't bother putting paint on the face at first, so I still have to add some of like the highlights and stuff on the gray. And is there some place that needs shadows on the gray? I don't think so, but the creamy part might need a little bit of shadow. I do need to define the lip area a bit more. So that looks dark both because the, you know, it goes back to the gray on the muzzle area, and also because, you know, that lip overhangs this lip, so there's a shadow line. And I don't know if I went dark enough on the end of the muzzle. Looks like, well, I think I just decide whether I want to take some liberties. You know, I don't always want to match like just this exact photo, because you can see that where that line is and everything is going to be different on every little guy. So sometimes I want to make choices based on the sculpt. I mean, the sculpt may not support making a transition in a particular place as well as it would support making it in a different place. Or if I am trying to like give him a little expression or something, make my choices based on that. But there, I think I'm okay calling the face good there. This I just don't like for some reason. This is too uniform, I think. I think I need to get my nature brush back and just add something. That, a little bit of that, maybe. Just like that area is not so overhung and shadowed that we shouldn't be able to see any texture or something. I think that's what's throwing me off. Is that there should be some variation on that. So when you get really deep shadows, you know, like here, your eye doesn't really expect to see a lot of information. So you often don't need to continue a texture into a shadow area like that. But for something that's more on the perpendicular, I think I do want to see some more texture. But yeah, I'll live with that for now. Alright, so now he needs his tail. We need to go to the butt picture. So there's a lot of brown in that tail, actually. That's interesting. Let's see. This guy doesn't have as much brown. So it's like the tail is dark underneath and light, and then the stripe. See, this might be too much to incorporate into a miniature, so I might just want to pick a color. And so like go with the gray, but then the darker color of the stripe, I think. Gallows Adler says, that's wicked for some dioramas I've got in the brain vault. Ooh, dioramas, those are fun. Okay, fun to look at. I don't know if I sometimes don't have the patience to do diorama things. Like, I don't even have the patience to do bases, so I think we all know what I mean there. And mix in just a little bit of brown. Get that variation thing happening. Since I know I'm painting markings over it, I don't want to go too bananas on making that complicated. I do want to add some shadow. And then maybe some even more shadow. So, you know, there'd be a line of shadow cast where the tail is hanging over the leg there. Also known as dark lining. Dark lining is real. It reflects reality. You know, a lot of people feel like it's artificial and cartoony and goofy, but it reflects something that happens in reality. Yeah, these paints are getting a little thick because I do not use wet palettes the way you're supposed to. That's why we had the whole reverse wet palette demonstration earlier, because that works better for me. And I kind of, you know, I would want to finish this side before working on that line because that line is pretty narrow, but it is like part of the guy, so let's do at least a little bit of it. Who has a good, my pictures has a good line. I mean, I guess we can at least do the shoulder line. And then their manes kind of have like a stripe look almost. Some of them. I mean, that guy didn't. And this seems easier to paint. I did the stripe thing on the one in the store. And I did not do it very naturally looking. I don't think. And I think the dark mane... Oh, I never finished the ear. I think the dark mane... works better on a miniature, like a little less complication. But the checkerboard thing is kind of a cool effect too, so it's hard to say. But if I was painting for speed, I would definitely like not do the mane with stripes, because like that's just adding complication in your life that you don't need to for something you're trying to get on the table. Especially if, you know, that it can still look like that animal without you doing that, then that's not even cheating. That's just you picking the reference that best matches what you're trying to do. You do need a slightly smaller brush, I think, to go into the inside of the ear. No, that part should be in the darker color. That's still part of the ridge. And then this ear is kind of facing down, so I'm doing this more as an example. If I, you know, considering that it's not going to be visible at most angles, I would say you don't have to go too bananas on that ear. The other ear is way more apparent to the viewer. I feel like I want more shadow than this for the hair, just because it is facing down. We need some great shapes on the ear. So do a little bit of shadow there. And then a little bit of light. And maybe even a little more light once it's dry. Watching for that little sheen. A little stop sign sheen. Now, stripe down the back. So I'm using thinner paint. This is more transparent. So I don't want either here. I want it to be more transparent so that I'm not making a really prominent line like that. And I also want it to definitely not have any texture, because if I had a texture line, that is pretty tough to get rid of. So this is paint diluted for both purposes. I lost my burrow butt. So it's just pretty light. Okay. Get some more darkness down in that part. So I'm going to build up that darker value with repeated applications rather than coming in with one thick thing that's going to have very dramatic edges. That was black. I don't think we want to go to black. So this is somewhat less diluted paint, and I'm going in the middle of where I was before. So that I will not make that edge. And well, I don't know if it looks dramatic enough. Maybe we need a little bit of black. But I would rather do it that way. Go conservative and then adjust, than to just come in with a big black stripe and then spend hours trying to make that transition look less goofy. It's got the hair that's not his on it. And then it's like that transition between the belly cream color and the gray, in that it's a very narrow area to do the transition, but you do need to soften that edge, because all those little hairs will be making that not seem like that kind of a line. Not 100% sure I got it in exactly the right spot, but I imagine that I will be doing it again when I, do the other side of the guy and then come back. And I have to do the rest of that line. Got a little part that ended up looking kind of lighter than the surrounding area, so I'm expanding where it is instead of trying to paint over it. Just to add more highlights on those parts that are, the hip is very upthrust compared to some of the other structures that aren't getting as much light. So I'm okay with that getting lighter. I just want it to look lighter all over like it should, not just in one little area. So I think this side is pretty close to what I would live with. Reaper Miniatures John is checking in that everyone's having a good day, and I hope that you are. So I got one side finished in about the appropriate amount of time. But so I talked about the Christmas miniatures. If you look at my blog, you can see some of them. This is one that if you go on the Reaper site, there's like a banner that says Holidays 2023, I think. So this is one of the ones that it's only seasonally available, but it's not a 12 days miniature. You can just buy one if you want. He is the Mistletoe Goblin. I think I painted this on a stream last year, talking about painting red. So we've got the darker red and the lighter red, and I've got a blog post because I painted the one for Reaper with the same colors. So I just was on stream last year showing how I did that. I was thinking, maybe while the some of the wet blending part was drying, I could work on his skin, but alas, it didn't work out that way. I do want to finish painting this guy though. My parents really liked him, so I kind of I'm gonna put him on a little base and send him to my parents. I don't have the miniatures here because I painted them for Reaper, so they're at Reaper. But if you go to my blog that Quindy shared in the chat, or you can, it's there. The current main post shows all the Christmas miniatures that I painted and links to the article about painting red and all kinds of other Christmassy things. This is the set of colors for this year. Oh, there were. Hold on. I had fixed it. Hold on. There we go. Photoshop. This is the Reaper Holiday set of colors for this year. This is them swatched out. So these two are metallics, which is nice to see on stream instead of in a photo because you can see the shiny. This is a very popular color. I love it too. And I'm really want to paint something that color. But that did not work for the donkey, so I'll have to come up with some other thing. So those are what the colors look like. I like, this is kind of like when I think of brown, like if I was just in my brain, someone said, what color is brown? This is what I think of as brown. That's like default brown. Not that this isn't also brown, but you know what I mean. So yeah, that's all holiday stuff. There is so the dreidel blue here, the dreidel golem is in the holiday section. It's not one of the 12 days minis. If you have a certain minimum purchase, so I think it's every $40 or equivalent currency, you can add one of the 12 days miniatures, and I think that runs until the 15th, and is not available in from the Australia hub. So yeah, go do that. There's some cool stuff. I didn't paint the new ones, and I want the new ones. They're so cute. But yeah, I'm going to call that it for today. I was going to do a test related to another holiday stream I want to do. I didn't get there. I'll probably test on my own to see if it's viable. So I don't know if I'll be doing that next week. Tune in and find out. If not, I'll find something else fun to do. And I'll switch back over here for now. And say goodbye to everyone, and I'll see you next week. Well, we're going to let Quindy find us a raid, of course, so that we can keep the hobby fun going. Thanks, Julie. Sakura. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me and answering those horse questions. And that was helpful, because like I know there are coat color, main color kind of rules with horses, but I don't know what they are. So we are going to be raiding Kitten Clubhouse, and say hi, tell them how awesome Reaper is, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.